Good morning. I was asked to do a tutorial on how I did my mermaid cut. So I'm going to start with not just applying the decals, but showing you how to adjust the file for the correct size to go around and fit the tumbler correctly. I'm using an RTIC 30 ounce, the older style. So you, depending on which tumbler you use, are probably going to have to do a little bit of adjustment on your files. The first thing you need to do is you need to measure each section of your cup for each strip of little half circles to go around the tumbler. And I decided to do a strip application of the decal because I had a hard time placing the full sheet decals, and individually placing each half circle was just too tedious for me. So the first thing you want to do is you want to measure around each section of your cup. You're going to start about 1/4 inch down because you really want to get the center measurement of each strip, and each strip is about 1/2 inch tall. So measure that, and what I've done is I've measured all of these prior to this video because I'm going to try really hard to keep this video as short as possible. And then you're going to want to measure down about 1/2 inch from there each time. So each time your measurement is going to get slightly smaller because your cup does taper. Hope you can all see that. I don't like to see myself on camera, so I'm going to try to avoid it as much as possible. The hardest part to measure, again, you're going to want to write down each of these measurements, but I cheated and I did this before, so, and so on and so forth down the cup. So you probably will have about 9 measurements on the top section. Again, depending on the style of your cup and how tall this top section is. If it's about 4.5 inches, or you're going to have about 9 measurements. The hardest part to do is when you get down to this part. And what I did was I got my tape measure to the top of, just to the top of where it starts curving, and I pulled that measurement in, and then I went from there. Okay, got all that. Again, a little tough. I wish I had a spare hand when I was doing this for real the last time. If you have somebody to help you, especially with this curved part, that is helpful. And I will pause this here and show you what I came up with for the measurements. Well, and here we go with how to adjust your file take 2, because apparently when I turned my camera so you could see the screen better, it cut off the side of the file that you really need to see. As I was saying earlier, I measured each section of my cup, and these are the measurements I came out with. Got 12 5/8, 12 1/2, 12 3/8 twice, etc., etc. I took those and converted them into decimals because decimals are what you're going to be working with when you adjust the length of the strip in your silhouette file. I had a Cricut years and years ago. I traded it in way before they came up with all the online things. It only used cartridges. I sold it and bought a silhouette and have not looked back, really. I like the fact that I don't have to be online in order to do things with my software. And again, it's a personal preference. But if you have any questions on how to do this in Cricut, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to be able to help, but maybe somebody else can answer those questions for you. one of the main reasons I did my silhouette file like this is because I realized that not everybody has a 12-inch by 24-inch mat. And of course, because the top section of the cup is 12 inches or bigger, you need to have your strips cut in longer than 12 inches. So in order to work around that, and also in order to adjust any little tiny differences in what you've measured and what the cup actually is, I've cut the last half circle as a separate little section. So what you're going to want to do is you need to adjust this first row plus that last half circle to be the complete length of your first measurement, which is 12.625 converted into decimals. So first thing I do is I move that little half circle up to the top line. I mark both of these design elements, and then I use my align tool, which is right here, and I make sure everything is aligned nice and neat by clicking on Align Top. And you can see here that this is overlapped, one on top of the other. Once you do that, excuse me, once you do that, then you need to group these two pieces of your file together. A couple different ways to do that. You can right click and you can hit group, or you can use this little tool down here in the bottom left hand corner of your screen and just click it. Now that groups that long strip and that single half circle into one continuous strip. It doesn't permanently put them that way, but it does allow you to do your adjustments on your measurements. So then you want to come over here and use your scale tool. You want to open up the scale window and you want to adjust the width of this file to 12.625. And once you do that, Silhouette will play with you and decide, no, that's really not what you want. It does change slightly the height of your file. I always use the lock aspect. That's what that does. You can choose to not use the lock aspect, and that means every row of half circles will be the exact same height. I've chose to make them slightly adjusted. You really can't see a ton of difference, but it also, I think, makes the cup a little bit better. Then you click apply. Once you've done that, this first row will adjust to this width and this height. Now, once you've got that done, you're going to go ahead and you're going to ungroup this file, which means it has two separate sections again. And then you're going to move your little half circle back down here. So keep in mind that you're going to work with a separate half circle on each row of half circles. So again, you're going to take this second one, you're going to move this up here, get it all aligned. You can use your keys, your arrow keys, to nudge this slightly up or down or sideways. You're going to hold down your shift key so that both of those are selected. You're going to come over here to your align tool. You're going to align it to the top. Then you're going to group these two pieces together. And then you're going to use your scale tool and you're going to change the measurement to the second row that you've measured, which in my case is 12.5. I'm going to come over here, I'm going to take 12.5, 12.5, and again, make sure it's 12.5, and then click apply. Once you've done that, then you're going to ungroup And you're going to move your second little half circle back down onto your cutting mat. And so on and so forth until you have every row individually done, again, according to your own measurements for the top part of the cup, the curve, and the bottom part of the cup. Now, of course, I've done these because I've already cut my file, so each one of these is already measured for my cup, and so we are going to go on to the next part, which involves applying the decals to the cup. Now, if you don't know how to cut, there are tons of silhouette groups out there that can help you on just the basic steps. And there is also a silhouette school blog, and I do still occasionally pick up some tips and tricks from them and think, oh, I didn't know you could do that. And so I'm not going to go into great detail about how to send this file to my silhouette machine. Be right back. Okay, now for the important part. What I've done is I've cut my file completely, and you can see it's all cut and weeded so that I have a full file of mermaid scales. I did use Oracal 631, which is the non-permanent version of the Oracal vinyl, and I like to use this a little bit better than the 651, which is the permanent version, for doing this application. It seems to come off from the cups quite a bit better. Not only can I play with it while I am putting it on my cup, but I also, after doing the glitter and everything, it's a whole lot easier to get off for me. So again, it's a personal preference. I know some people use contact paper. I know that some people use vinyl. So you really just have to play around to see what works for you. So we're going to start with the first strip, and I'm just going to peel it up. I do not use transfer tape for this step. Because it's 631, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it doesn't seem to stick to anything permanently, so it's really easy. And I'm really hoping you can see this. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start, it's sticking to me, I'm just going to start by laying this top strip along the top edge of my cup. This is probably the hardest row to do other than the curve. And once you get this row done, the rest of them are fairly easy. But you want to get this row right because that makes the rest of your cups, the rest of the decals, fairly easy to put on. Slowly lay this down, and as you can see, I'm aligning the top of this right along with the top of my cup as it flips all over. Okay, but again, it's super easy to get off your cup, so even if you just lay it there and while you're doing the rest of it, I'll just kind of try to let it lay itself. And work this. And I know this doesn't seem like hugely faster than placing each individual scale, but the quicker part comes in when you're actually peeling them off, because you don't have a bunch of little individual scales that if they don't stick together with your glitter, you have to pick them off one by one. Come on, lay down. Hoping you're able to see what I'm doing. Yeah. And again, you know, this is just a matter of playing. Normally I lay my cup down on my table and do it that way. Once you get about halfway around, seems to go a little bit quicker. Okay, now I'm to the edge and you can see I've got that one missing spot. You can see I've got that one spot there that's not got a little half circle on it. So that's where my individually cut half circle comes into play. And I'm just going to lay it Sure I am. I'm just going to lay it right on top of my two scales. Now you can see that my measurement is not perfect. It's off by a little bit, but that's okay. That's fairly easy to fix. You can either lay it a little bit farther over here. So yes, you have a little bit wider line or blank space on your cup. But again, that's why we do this way, so you don't have to worry about getting those to match up exactly. And then once I've got that all down, I just rub it down really good so that it sticks fairly well. Okay. Now we're going to start with the second row. I don't know if it's better if I'm out farther or up closer. Again, I'm just going to peel this off. Now, of course, your second row gets placed in the middle. And I do overlap them some. So that you have them attaching to each other, but you do need to get it lined up straight so that your tips are not excuse me, I'm going to lay this down for a sec so it's easier to do. But I'm just going to place each scale in the middle of the top of each scale in the middle of the last one. If you do get it a little crooked and you end up with your tips kind of over, it's super easy to pull off and start over again. Because again, it's not permanent vinyl, it's the temporary vinyl you're using on your walls and stuff if you're doing wall decorations or whatever else that you wouldn't want the vinyl to be permanently on. So on and so forth. And again, I'm not going to sit here and make you guys watch each single row of placements. If you do get a little bit off and you want to kind of readjust this back into the middle of your things, what I do is the bubbles I just kind of rub down with my, because again, this is not staying on here. This is not something you need to worry about going under your epoxy. So a little wrinkle here and there is not necessarily going to be a big deal. I don't like that. Off you come. I also don't worry. I don't clean my cup before I do this, obviously, because I have my hands all over it. So putting any kind of alcohol or acetone or whatever it is you choose to use to clean your cup before you apply glitter is kind of pointless in this step. I do clean my cup with alcohol before I put on the epoxy, and it does not seem to lift the vinyl up in one little bit, so it's not a problem, and the vinyl does stay down fine, at least long enough to apply the epoxy and glitter. Because I do apply my glitter with epoxy, I do not like using Mod Podge. To me, and again, this is a totally personal preference, it dries too fast, and I can't work that fast. Very slow and deliberate in what I do. And I lay this down. This is totally going slower than it did before, only because I'm trying to hold it so you guys can see what I'm doing. I don't know that I'm doing such a great job of that, but certainly giving it my best shot. Okay. So I think I like that. It's okay. And I'm not precise by any means. I mean, and on my last cup, because I was playing around with my file measurements to see how they had done, I had several scales that were way off, but you really don't notice them that much. They're not that obvious. They are, and besides, if you would show me a mermaid that has exactly the same size scales all the way around, then I'll think about it. Okay, so I've got this down. Now you see here, and like I said, I'm not being terribly precise. That one is a little bit up over that. It's up into, I don't know if you guys can see that. There. It's up into the other one. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little scissors here, and I'm going to just lift the top section. And it's just easier for me to do it with my pick tool. I'm just going to lift that little top up right there. And I'm going to snip off the top section. So I just cut off, again, I don't know if you can, I just cut off a little bit of my decal so that it's not overlapping up into the other part of the scale. And there are a couple of those I need to do. And then once I've got that done, then again, I come back here to my sheet. I use my second little half circle, and I close the last round. And you see that one fit exactly perfectly. So on and so forth. And I'm not going to make you all sit here and watch me do every single thing on this. So it takes about 45 minutes to get all of these decals on. I'll come back for the applying of the glitter.